The small stucco apartment at 4334 Lemoyne Street in Echo Park doesn't look like the kind of place people whisper about. It's compact, half hidden behind bougainvillea, with narrow stairs that creak even when no one's walking on them. Elliott Smith lived here in the final years of his life, writing, recording, drifting between insomnia and fragile clarity. After his death in 2003, the place stayed empty for months. When the new tenants, a young couple named Theo and Marla, moved in nearly 20 years later, they found the walls thin and the atmosphere oddly compressed, as if the air itself remembered someone else's voice. The property manager mentioned the apartment's musical past, but avoided names. Only when Marla noticed the faint initials S scratched into the underside of the kitchen window frame did she begin to dig. The first strange moment came 3 nights after they moved in. Theo was half asleep when he heard a soft, rhythmic sound, not quite a song, more like someone tapping a pick against a guitar body. It came from the closet where they'd stacked unopened boxes. The noise would stop the second he sat up. Marla dismissed it as pipes or an old building settling, but Theo knew guitars. That sound had resonance, intention. A week later, while unpacking, Marla found a small cassette wedged behind the bathroom vanity. The label had faded, but the handwriting delicate, slanted read, "Basement Mix, Don't Erase." They borrowed a friend's tape player, expecting nothing. But when the tape began to play, the room seemed to shrink around them. A rough recording filled the air, a finger-picked melody underlined by murmured vocals, words half-swallowed, like someone singing for themselves. The track ended abruptly with a sigh and a shuffle, and then a whisper, "Start again, please." It wasn't a voice they recognized. It wasn't clear, but it sounded impossibly intimate, like the singer was in the same room, leaning just beyond the reach of the light. Over the following nights, the cassette wouldn't stay where they left it. Once, it reappeared in the hallway near the front door. Another time, inside the empty guitar case Theo kept from college. They stopped mentioning it, each quietly hoping the other would throw it out, yet neither could. Something about the sound of that whisper made it feel wrong to destroy. Neighbors later told them that before Elliott moved out, he'd often record late at night with only one lamp on, the yellow one by the window that faced the alley. They said he liked to keep the window open, even in the cold, claiming that the outside noise helped him find the melody. One old neighbor swore she could still hear that faint strumming some nights, though the apartment had been silent for years. Theo tried to test it once. He left his phone recording overnight on the kitchen counter. The next morning, he played it back. At 3:17 a.m., the audio picked up what sounded like a single guitar chord, soft, short-lived, surrounded by static. No one had been awake. No one had keys to the apartment. The file corrupted halfway through. They moved out 3 months later, leaving behind the tape, the lamp, and that uneasy silence that filled the place whenever dusk fell. But the next tenants, a musician named Adrian and his girlfriend, claimed something even more unsettling. That some nights, when the traffic on Lemoyne died down, a man's voice could be heard faintly from the kitchen corner, humming something that sounded like "Between the Bars." And always, at the end, just before it stopped, a whisper, "Start again." Theo never spoke about the tape again, but after they left, something in him stayed behind on Lemoyne Street. It was the kind of silence that stuck to your clothes, a smell of old wood and electricity that lingered even outdoors. Marla noticed how he'd flinch whenever they passed a pawn shop window displaying a guitar. Sometimes, while driving through Echo Park at night, he'd slow down near that street without realizing it, staring through the windshield as if expecting to see light through the second-floor window, that same yellow glow the neighbors said never really went out. When Adrian and his girlfriend, Lila, moved in, the apartment had been repainted. New blinds, fresh white walls, clean counters. The property manager told them the last tenants were quiet folks, creative type, nothing odd. But the air still carried something faintly musty, like cigarette smoke and lemon cleaner mixed with years of closed windows. They didn't think much of it at first. Lila loved how sunlight filtered through the old glass and left streaks across the hardwood floors. Adrian, a musician himself, liked the room's acoustics. The sound bounced just right, intimate, low, honest. He even joked, No wonder people wrote songs here. He started recording right away, dragging in his small amp, a battered Telecaster, and a portable mic setup. The first few takes went fine, but around midnight something shifted. Adrian said later it was like the sound inside the headphones began to breathe differently, fuller, almost layered. He stopped playing, thinking maybe a neighbor's TV had bled through the line. But there it was again, under his chords, a soft hum, the tail of a phrase, faint but musical. When he played back the recording, the hum was still there. It wasn't interference. It was a voice, barely audible, but melodic enough to make the hair rise along his arms. The words were impossible to catch, but the tone, it carried a warmth, a sadness. Not menacing, more like someone trying to remember something that once mattered deeply. Lila laughed when he told her, said he was romanticizing the place. Echo Park is full of ghosts, babe. Most of them rent-controlled. But later that night, when she was cleaning the kitchen, she found something wedged between the fridge and the wall. A folded piece of paper, stiff with age, blank on one side. On the back, written faintly in pencil, were the words, "Try to stay." No name, no date, just that. She showed it to Adrian, and for a while they treated it like a curiosity. A relic. They pinned it on the corkboard near the desk. But then, the next morning, the paper had shifted. Not fallen, shifted. It now faced the other way, the blank side forward, like someone had turned it over carefully. That's when Lila started noticing the temperature changes. Around 2 or 3 a.m., the kitchen would cool by several degrees, even in August. The air would thin like standing near an open freezer. Once, when she went to grab a glass of water, she saw condensation on the inside of the window even though it hadn't rained in weeks. And through that fog, she could almost make out fingerprints. Adrian refused to talk about it, but his recordings grew stranger. Each new take carried something different underneath: faint knocks, subtle harmonics, the occasional whisper that sounded like, "Wait." He uploaded one track online, under a pseudonym, and someone in the comments asked, "Is that a tribute to Elliott?" That was the first time either of them saw the name written out, and something in the back of Lila's mind clicked. She searched the address, and within minutes the screen filled with candlelight vigils, graffiti hearts, and fans leaving notes that read, "Miss you, Elliott." She felt sick. The same hallway she walked through every day, the same cracked tiles, the same narrow kitchen was there in the photos, taken 20 years earlier. The yellow lamp in the corner hadn't changed. That night, she dreamed of a man sitting on the floor, back against the stove, softly tuning a guitar. He didn't look up. He didn't move, just murmured something she couldn't quite hear, then struck a single note that vibrated through her chest until it woke her. When she opened her eyes, the lamp by the window was on. They had never bought one. In the following weeks, the atmosphere grew heavier. Lila began keeping a diary of what happened each night: times, sounds, sensations. Adrian, meanwhile, retreated further into his music, convinced the strange phenomena were feeding his creativity. His songs became quieter, slower, filled with delicate pauses that felt almost like conversation. One night, as he recorded another take, Lila watched him from the doorway. The lamp flickered. He was singing softly, eyes half closed, when suddenly, through the mic, another voice joined, matching his pitch, one octave higher, perfectly aligned. Adrian froze, staring at the waveform on the screen. Two voices. The track ended in silence. Lila whispered, "Did you hear that?" He nodded slowly, his throat tight. Then, from the speakers, faint but distinct, a whisper, recorded over everything else, just 4 words long. "Try to stay a while. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story." Adrian didn't sleep that night. He sat in front of his monitor, staring at the waveform on the screen like it was something alive. The faint lines of the second voice, delicate, ghostly traces, ran perfectly parallel to his own track. Not random static, not feedback. This was structured sound. Someone or something was singing with him. He replayed the section over and over, isolating the frequencies, adjusting the EQ, straining to hear every breath between the words. The timbre was fragile, almost whisper-soft, and carried that same brittle intimacy he'd only ever heard in Elliott Smith's old demos. Lila had fallen asleep on the couch, curled under a blanket, the lamp still burning beside her. Adrian sat motionless for hours, until the dawn light began to seep through the blinds. The yellow tint of morning touched the empty guitar case near the window. He could swear it wasn't there the night before. When he finally went to bed, the apartment felt wrong, airless, like it had lost all oxygen. He dreamed he was in the same room, except everything was slightly off. The walls were closer, the floor darker, the window wider, letting in no light at all. A man's silhouette sat in the corner, tuning a guitar that made no sound. Adrian tried to speak but couldn't. Then the man turned his head slightly, not to look, but to listen. He woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. The digital clock glowed 3:17 a.m., the same time Theo's old recording had captured that single mysterious chord. Over the next week, Lila noticed subtle changes in Adrian's behavior. He stopped answering calls from friends, forgot to eat, spoke less. His notebooks were covered in scribbles, fragments of lyrics, half-finished lines like, "Between the walls, someone hums the same song twice." He told her he was close to finishing something important, something he couldn't quite explain. When she asked what he meant, he simply said, "It's like he's helping me." The phrase chilled her more than any cold spot in the apartment. She began to leave the window closed at night, though Adrian always found a way to open it again, saying he needed the air. One evening, as she came home from work, she saw him sitting cross-legged on the floor, the cassette player she'd found months earlier spinning quietly beside him. The tape hissed, and through it came faint strumming, the same melancholic tone that had haunted Theo years before. "What are you doing with that?" she asked. Adrian looked up slowly, his eyes distant. "He left this for a reason." She knelt beside him, the hair on her arms standing on end. "Who?" "Elliott." The way he said it without hesitation, like he was talking about a friend, made her heart pound. She wanted to shake him, to pull the plug on everything, to run. But the sound that floated from the tape was so gentle, so heart-breakingly familiar. She couldn't move. It wasn't threatening. It was sad, fragile, almost pleading. That night, she found a new note pinned to the corkboard, same handwriting as before. It said, "Don't erase." She tore it down and threw it away, but by morning it was back, pinned neatly again. The days that followed blurred into each other. Adrian stopped leaving the apartment entirely. Lila started sleeping at a friend's house a few blocks away, returning only to check on him. The second night she came back, the front door was ajar. Inside, the lamp glowed a soft amber, casting shadows that trembled along the walls. Adrian was at his desk, headphones on, singing softly. His voice blended perfectly with another, indistinguishable from his own but slightly older, worn, familiar in that devastating way she couldn't bear to name. When he noticed her, he smiled faintly. "Listen to this," he said. "It's finally right." He pressed play. The track began with gentle fingerpicking, slow and deliberate. Two voices moved together in unison, one warm, alive, the other spectral, paper-thin. The lyrics spoke of time folding back, of staying, of not letting go. As the song built, a strange pressure filled the room, as if the walls themselves were vibrating with the sound. Halfway through, Lila's vision blurred. The lights dimmed, and then she saw the outline of a man standing near the window, head slightly bowed, the curve of a guitar cradled in his arms. His shirt hung loose, his hair unkempt, his face half in shadow. He looked peaceful, listening. The music stopped abruptly. Adrian tore off the headphones, trembling. "Did you see that?" But when she turned back toward the window, it was empty. Only the yellow lamp remained, its filament humming faintly like the tail of a note. Later that night, Lila packed her things in silence. She didn't argue when Adrian said he needed to stay a little longer. He promised he'd follow in a few days after one last recording. She kissed his forehead, feeling the cold sweat on his skin, and whispered, "Please don't stay too long." She left the apartment key on the counter beside the old cassette. As she closed the door behind her, The faint sound of a guitar string floated through the hallway, plucked once, gently, like a goodbye. And then, just before she stepped outside, a quiet voice came from behind the door, muffled, barely audible, but clear enough to make her stop breathing. It said, "Try to stay." When Lila returned 3 days later, the street was strangely quiet. Lemoyne always had its background hum: traffic from sunset, kids on skateboards, the faint chorus of barking dogs, and early evening arguments. But that night it was still. The air felt heavy, as if the neighborhood was holding its breath. She parked across from the building and stared up at the second-floor window. The yellow lamp was glowing again. Her hand trembled as she unlocked the front gate. The air in the hallway was thick, carrying a faint metallic tang like old strings or dust burning on a hot bulb. The apartment door was closed, but faint music drifted through it. Finger-picked chords, slow and tender. It was unmistakably Adrian's playing, but layered with another guitar, softer, older, perfectly in sync. She pushed the door open. Inside, everything was exactly as she'd left it. The dishes stacked neatly in the sink, the curtain half drawn, the air conditioner humming low. But Adrian wasn't in sight. The lamp on the desk flickered weakly, throwing long shadows across the floor. The cassette deck was running, reels turning. "Adrian?" she whispered. No answer. Just the music still looping, those same overlapping chords. She stepped farther in. The apartment felt colder than usual, her breath faintly visible as she passed through the living room. The curtains swayed, though the window was shut. Near the wall, she saw his guitar lying flat on the floor, the strap twisted as if it had been dropped mid-song. One string hung loose, snapped clean at the bridge. She followed the sound into the small kitchen and froze. Adrian sat on the floor against the stove, legs outstretched, head tilted slightly, as if he'd fallen asleep sitting up. The tape recorder beside him kept spinning, its faint static blending with the soft buzz of the lamp. His face was calm, too calm, like he was listening to something far away. The smell in the room was sharp stale beer, faint sweat, and something metallic beneath it. "Adrian," she whispered again, crouching beside him. He didn't move. For a long moment, she thought she saw his chest rise. But it was only the flicker of the lamp, light shifting across the shadows of his shirt. She touched his hand cold. The guitar pick he always carried was still between his fingers. Then the tape clicked to a stop. Silence filled the room, thick and unnatural. But a moment later, from the speaker came a faint sound, a breath, then a voice, recorded deep within the tape's static. It wasn't Adrian's. "You did good," the voice said softly. "You can rest now." Her stomach turned to ice. She stumbled back, grabbing the table for balance. The cassette deck began to rewind by itself, the reels spinning backward faster and faster until the magnetic whirring filled the air. She unplugged it, but the motion didn't stop. The window rattled, the lamp blinked, and then the sound of a guitar string plucked once, clean and deliberate. The same note from her dream. When she ran, she didn't remember how she got to the car. She only remembered the cold night air, the sensation of being watched from the window above. The yellow glow followed her down the street until it disappeared in the rearview mirror. The police called it accidental. The report said, overexertion, dehydration, possible medication. Nothing suggested foul play. The apartment was cleaned out within a week. The landlord painted again, replaced the blinds, listed it for rent by the next month. But when the next tenant, a sound engineer named Claire, moved in, she mentioned something strange to the property manager. On her first night, she said, she woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of music, a soft duet coming from the kitchen. When she turned on the light, the sound stopped. But in the reflection of the window, she thought she saw two figures sitting side by side. One with his head bowed, another leaning close, both listening to something no one else could hear. Claire tried to record it the following week, leaving her phone on the counter overnight. The next morning, the audio was empty except for a single whisper, buried deep under the static. It said, "Try to stay." After that, she left the apartment before her lease was up. And yet, people still pass the old building at night and look up at that window, wondering why it glows so late. Some say they hear faint guitar chords when the wind is still. Others claim to see a man's silhouette leaning against the glass, head bowed, the faint shimmer of a second figure beside him. The manager eventually stopped showing the unit. He keeps it locked now, claiming it's under renovation. But sometimes, when the sun sets just right over Echo Park, you can still catch the reflection of that yellow lamp in the opposite building's window, steady, quiet, eternal. Inside, the air never moves. The walls remember every note. And somewhere, through the static and the silence, a voice still murmurs, tired, intimate, patient. Start again. Don't forget to subscribe and like if you liked this story.